nuclear weapons. With us now is Congressman Martin Stutzman of Indiana, a Republican. Thank you so much for being with us, Congressman. What now?
Good morning, John. Great to be with you. I think that this is one thing that we've just continually seen from the Iranians. They have a propaganda machine that's still working, and they still sometimes don't, they're just not realistic. One of the things that we know that has to happen is there can be no nuclear weapon that the Iranians have access to. Any sort of nuclear material that's still left over in Iran is unacceptable. And, there are reports out that are saying they have the ability up to maybe 200 bombs. We'll find out for sure. But, President Trump is a strong negotiator. He's he's got the cards right now, especially with the control of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that's the other piece, too, that we're all seeing as an international community, that Iran cannot have complete control over the Strait of Hormuz, knowing that they will leverage it against not only us, but also United States, Europe, and with China as well. So we need all of those partners to be at the table explaining why they can't have that sort of control.
You said President Trump claims the United States has all the cards. If that's all true, how does Iran seem to be stringing the U.S. along?
I think that, the one thing that we do know with Iran is that they'll feel like they have time, and they will try to drag this out. But every time a ship is turned back from, leaving the strait, that's about $250 million per ship. And it's estimated about 58 ships have been turned around. That's why the stopping their cash flow is really important. Yes, we are seeing here at home pain at the pump with gas prices, but that's even going to, I believe, in about a month or so, we'll see a lot of changes made. And I don't think Iran can hold on that long. They won't hold on that long. And plus, they're having also their internal battles of who's really in charge there. So I think President Trump, made the right decision by rejecting their proposal from what we know about it. And I think that sooner or later they will come back with something, or there's going to be further consequences. I think the other, big party at play here is China. China eventually can have put pressure on this regime, whoever is in charge there in Iran, as well, to help find a way forward. So that's why I think this trip to China for President Trump is an important one.
All over the papers this morning, there's talk about the president's trip to China and the idea there are some concern in Washington, some of these think tanks, that there could be some kind of a compromise where China would help open the strait in return from concessions from the United States on Taiwan. How would you feel about any concessions about Taiwan?
Well, I think it depends what it is. And, honestly, watching China recently, I think that they have been showing some restraint, and for whatever that reason is, I feel that they don't have the strength that they portray, but we'll see. But, they haven't, there's been some reports that maybe they've been supplying equipment to Iran. If that is happening, that's a problem. But that's why I think President Trump going to China, going in and having a meeting with them, it's important, not only for us here with dealing with Iran, but also our trade, relationship that we have with China. It's important. They need us, but we also need them. If they could start buying ag products, that would be very helpful for American farmers here in the Midwest.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about tariffs and unhappy with how the tariff regime has impacted China buying agricultural products. I do want to go back to Iran before I let you go here, because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave a bit of a status report on where he thinks Iran's power currently stands. Listen.
There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There's still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
So all of that was the stated goal of Operation Epic Fury, which Secretary of State Marco Rubio last week said was over. So if all those things still exist, isn't there much more work to do in this war?
Well, I think there's always going to be work as long as the IRGC is in place. And I think that would be the ultimate objective, in my perspective, is that there would be a change in the leadership in Iran, and part of that's going to happen internally with the people of Iran. And I hope that there are efforts. I believe that there are efforts that are already in action, but it's the people there have to take their country back, and that's very difficult. Considering the circumstances and how many people the IRGC has killed on the ground in Iran. So yes, there's still work to do. That's why, making sure they have no nuclear capability, that's priority number one. And then, of course, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, that many of their assets have been degraded. But, we're still trying to see who actually is in charge. And I'm sure that as, they struggle through the changes that they have faced with this attack from us and going after their assets and also controlling the strait, they're put in a very difficult spot. So they're going to hold on as long as they can. But I do believe that we're going to be in a much better, safer position than what we were 3 months ago. And I know that Europe and other people in the Middle East recognize that as well. And they're cheering this on, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's the UAE, Qatar, and other countries. This is a huge safety measure that we've just taken, that we've accomplished over the past several months.
Well, we'll see what happens next, because as of now, they don't appear any closer to a deal than they did yesterday or the day before that. Congressman Martin Stutzman, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.